Hey everybody, and welcome to my top 10 board games of all time. So this is the absolute pinnacle, the best of my favourite games that I've ever played. And to put things in perspective, I have played well over 1,000 games, so this is coming from a very large sample size. But before I get started on the top 10, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, keyender.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. Additionally, be sure to check out my first game at THALAMUS. This is a 2 to 4 player lightning fast abstract strategy game, and if you send me an email on the below email address, then I'll get a copy across to you. But let's get started. At number 10, I have Hansa Teutonica, one of the purest Euros that I've ever played. It's a route building game as you are trying to deploy your little cubes and discs on these roads between different trading posts, establish presence in those trading posts to create a network and generate you points at the end of the game, but also to generate you points the more people go there in the future. Additionally, each time you go to certain places on the board, you will improve your engine by removing things off your personal player board, giving you more cubes to play with, but also increasing your yield of points through your biggest connected route, making you take cubes back faster, and being able to take more actions each turn. So lots of different things you can go for here. The level of interaction in this game is spectacular and somewhat nasty, as you are often incentivized to deliberately block your opponents to make them spend more resources to kick you out of the way, which will then let you spit out at different regions at a much faster tempo. So it's not being nasty for the sake of it, you are incentivized to do so for your own good, but it's nice how the game almost encourages you to get in your opponent's faces. As good as it gets, that is Hansa Teutonica at number 10. At number 9, I have Puerto Rico. So I think this is the first time that Puerto Rico has breached my personal top 10, despite being one of the most revered Euro games of all time. For me, no other game does the action selection system where other players piggyback off your action better than this game does. I love the way that once you, as the selector, take something, everybody else gets a slightly weaker version of it, meaning that turn order is so important because you can anticipate your opponents taking a certain action and then you can make do with that rather than wasting your whole turn doing that instead of what you actually want to do. Very simple kind of scoring methodology here, where you are kind of building up your own little colony, getting these little tiles in, getting the workers on those tiles to make those resources, and then shipping those resources off in boats to get victory points. But again, it's all about efficiency, it's all about getting into the mind of your opponent, lots of piggybacking. I love the buildings you can get in this game that can break rules and let you do different things that other players can't. So good deviation here as well. And for me, it is just board gaming perfection. Such an intricate and nuanced design. That is Puerto Rico at number 9. At number 8, I have Babylonia, which for me is the best of the Reiner Knizia route building style games. This one, you are simply deploying your little discs onto this really nice looking board, trying to surround cities, and if you have the majority, once a city is surrounded, you will gain that city and then everybody gets points for the cities they've collected. But also you'll be looking at the symbol on that city, and for every tile that you've placed, you'll get points if you can trace the route to that city, meaning that you can connect several cities together and try to score the same tiles again and again and again by connecting all those different cities. But of course, space is at a premium, so there's lots of cutting off and people grabbing the spots that you wanted. Additionally, I love how the ziggurats work in this game, where once you surround these temples, you'll get special abilities such as straight up victory points, or being able to deploy more discs at a time, having more discs on your rack for more flexibility, and so on. Again, a really pure game, lightning fast, scales really well, and brilliant design. That is Babylonia at number 8. At number 7, I have something completely different with Chinatown. Much more of a high energy negotiation style game, as you are trying to get as much money as you can by controlling different pieces of kind of real estate, really. Trying to put shops in these different regions, or units, trying to create big units of the same type of shop to get you more income. But the cool thing about this game is that everything is up for trade. So, you can trade the units you own, you can trade the shops you own, you can bribe people with money to swap things with you or not trade with somebody else. It really is such a simple system, meaning that all of the liveliness and all of the gameplay and the decisions come through yourself and not through the game dictating on what you can and can't do. Some of the best gaming experiences I've ever had come through playing Chinatown, and I just love how dynamic the game is and how more information is drip fed as the game progresses, because earlier in the game you might get like a plot of land that isn't really worth anything, but if you keep hold of it and don't build in it yourself, that particular unit might be extremely valuable to an opponent, because that might be the final piece of the puzzle that they need to build their big kind of super restaurant. So again, you've got to really leverage what you own here and basically exploit the knowledge on the board to maximum profit. The best negotiation game out there for sure, that is Chinatown at number 7. At number 6, I have Ra, so the second Knizia game on my personal top 10. And this is Knizia doing what he does best, bidding and set collection. And I love this kind of once around bidding system in this game, where each game you're going to have 4 tiles available to you at any time, but they're all fixed values, so you cannot just bid what you want. You are restricted to what you have. And it's all about trying to leverage those bids perfectly through this kind of push your luck tile drawing system, where you can choose to bid on lots of tiles when the timing is right for you, because you need to kind of trigger Ra, which is when you are obtaining these tiles when your opponents kind of can't afford it, but if they can afford it, they don't want to be overspending. So it's all about, again, trying to leverage those exact deals that suit you, but the game might throw a spanner or two in the works by forcing you to trigger auctions at certain times. But these tiles you are collecting are pretty simple in their own right. Simply points for each Nile tile you've collected if you get a flood, or collect different types of these characters, and if you don't, you might suffer some negative points, or have the most pharaohs. So all the tiles themselves are, again, really easy to score and to understand, but again, it all boils down to what are they worth at that time. Again, layers to the gameplay here, so fast, so engaging, and the new version just looks brilliant. So that is Ra at number 6. At number 5, I have Barrage. So a much heavier and more complex game than we've talked about so far. This one, I think, makes sense thematically, because what you're doing here is that you are trying to build up this infrastructure to harness energy from water flowing down a mountainscape. So you are trying to build dams in the most strategic locations, convert the water captured in those dams to energy by building power plants and sucking that water through these conduits, which might not necessarily belong to you and could generate points for other players as well. And it's all about cutting your opponents off here and being a little bit cutthroat, because as you can imagine, thinking logically, water flows downstream, so you might have built this really great little complex at the bottom of the board where you can convert water into energy with no real hassle. But if your opponent's can afford it, they can simply build their dam higher up the mountain and capture that water before it even reaches you. So this game has a great progression where as the game develops, then kind of the water is getting captured further and further up, and sometimes it's even being sucked back up the mountain to be captured in another dam to be used again. When I think about this game, I generally do think about the actual mountainscape and how that dam system works, but I don't think the worker placement part of this game should be understated either. Great turn angst here. Everything is inviting. Of course, you want to convert the water into energy, but you want to also start building new things onto the board by using your machinery more efficiently. And it also has a great resource system as well, where your resources are actually permanent, but they just get tied up for a duration through this kind of gear system, which really works perfectly. So this one, I'd love to play it more. It's a bit of a it's not the easiest game to get to the table, because it is quite a long affair, and it's not for everybody due to its kind of meanness, but the gameplay is just so well executed. That is Barrage at number 5. At number 4, I have my favourite pure tile placement game with Glen 2 Chronicles. This one probably, well in fact definitely the best use of the time track system that I've ever seen, where you can go as far as you want around this rondel to get the tile that you want, but you won't get another go until all the other players pass you. And normally for me that mechanism, although I like it in theory, it does fall flat because a lot of these games kind of force you just to kind of crawl along and you kind of just jump a spot or two. This one, there are so many inviting things that might suit your strategy that you might jump halfway across the board just to get the exact tile that you want. And you're building up your own little more of buildings and rivers and stuff. And I love the kind of resource system here is when you place a building, you'll activate not only that tile, but also all the tiles around it, which again will generate you resources. It will let you convert resources into other ones. It'll let you move your little farmers around and so on. So also has great modularity here. There's tons of these chronicles that you can add in to turn the gameplay on its head. But the base game alone, I think, is brilliant. And all those extra chronicles just add that little bit of cherry on top of the cake to make it that much more interesting, which is, again, already an almost perfect game. So that is Glen 2 Chronicles at number 4. At number 3, I have Keyflower, a wonderful hybrid of tile placement, bidding, resource management, worker placement, all through a very easy to understand game system, as each round there's going to be a bunch of these tiles up for grabs, and you can use your workers, which come in 4 different colours actually, but you are not assigned a particular colour. All the colours can be spread amongst all the players. And then you're using those workers to either activate these tiles or to bid for those tiles to hopefully gain them into your village where you can use them in the future. But you can actually use other players' previously collected tiles, but on the basis that the workers that you've placed on them will go to that player at the end of the round. So there's this really dynamic shared economy of these workers where you can use all the best buildings again and again and again, but that might belong to this player over here, meaning that they're getting more workers to use against you at next time. Lots of strategic play here, as at the beginning of the game you're given these endgame tiles, which gives you something to work towards. A good amount to kind of pick up and deliver as well as you're shifting resources around your village. And again, another game with lots of layers and things to sink your teeth into. So that is Keyflower at number 3. At number 2, I have Trajan, in my favourite Stefan Feld game, which is certainly saying something considering how much I like his designs. This one probably the game that I find the most brain-burnery, because the Mancala system, the layered Mancala system, is so interesting as you are picking up these tokens in these bowls, depositing one off in each kind of clockwise bowl as you go, and the final token you place will determine the action you can take. But also you need to consider the colours of these tokens, because if you get the right arrangement of colours, then you can get these special add-on abilities that will kind of give you a little boost. The game is essentially a bunch of mini games where you're trying to kind of conquer part of the planet, and by moving your little military troops around, you're collecting kind of set collection tokens, collecting cards, climbing tracks, all the things that I like in Euro games. But I love the way it always reverts back to that Mancala system and planning your turns meticulously ahead. You can kind of wing it in this game and do all right, but I love the way that you are really rewarded by carefully selecting which action you're taking each time, looking at which tokens are going to be remaining in each disc or in each bowl at the end of your turn to obviously set you up for future turns as well. Good short-term decision making, good long-term decision making, in-game scoring, end-game scoring, and it's just such a brilliant design that works like clockwork. And it really baffles me how a game like this can be designed, because it's just so, well, just genius. That is Trajan at number 2. And finally, at number 1, I have El Grande. So one of the original area control style games, and of course for me, still the best of the bunch. For me, this does the genre just perfectly, as you are trying to control these different regions of Spain by having the most troops in those regions when it comes to the scoring phases. but it's just the tactical engagement of this game that I really love, and the card play as well, and the levels to the decision making that you're doing. Knowing when to sit back and knowing when to push. It has this great initiative system where you're playing these cards. The higher cards you play will give you first dibs on the action cards that you can take, but the lower cards you play means that you can bring more kind of troops into your pool ready to be deployed onto the board. So as I was saying, you need to know when to sit back and bring more troops so that you can set yourself up better for the future and not leave yourself out of pocket. The action cards themselves are super interesting, as you can mess and manipulate with the board state, kicking troops out of your regions, deploying more troops onto the board, shifting this and shifting that. And I love this Castillo system, as you can always deploy troops into this castle blindly. You're not quite sure what's going on in there, and at the end of the round, whoever's got the most in there will score more points. But you'll also do this kind of blind bidding system where you can deploy those troops again onto the map, which can again turn the majorities on its head. I can't find a fault with this game. It is just so much fun. I've played this so many times, and every single game has been as enjoyable, if not more enjoyable, than the last. There is expansion content for this, but I'd say do away with it. The base game itself is perfection. And, again, I played so many games, and this is the best of the best. That is El Grande at number 1. So there we have it. That concludes the video and concludes the top 100 for another year. Now, if you have been watching the entire series, then I do apologise about how long it has taken. I wasn't really anticipating it to take as long as it has, but hey, we've had fun along the way, and I'll probably return to do the list, maybe as a single video in 2025, and then probably back again to a series in 2026. But hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel, and check out my other content too. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.